All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Brendan Wilkes. I'm the education coordinator at the Haines Public Library. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm just going to have a quick spiel, and then I'll toss it over to Cindy and Russ. So everyone is muted right now, and I've turned off everyone's camera. It's just to make sure everything goes smoothly, bandwidth-wise. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them out in the chat. And at the very end, when Jon is done with his presentation, we'll also open up the mics and the cameras again for everyone who wants to speak. If anyone ever has any ideas for a program they'd like to do through the library, please let me know. Give me a call, 766-6420. I'm happy to help anyone, help facilitate any programs you might want to share, anything you want to do for the community. Please, we always have an open mind. And I think, it can be a lot of fun sharing with what knowledge you have and experiences you have with the rest of the community. So with that, I will shut up and throw it over to Cindy for the introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is sort of the first Armchair Traveler Series talk of this season. We did this last spring, and now we're doing it again. We have a total of 7 talks lined up, almost one a week between now and the end of April. The next one is by Tom Ely, and that one will be in person at the library, but I think it's also going to be recorded and available via Zoom. That one is Bike and Fish Rushers Lake Bacall, and that's March 10th. And then again at the library by Tom Ely. And then after that, I think we have Dennis Geeson. We have talks on the Alps, Adak Island, Costa Rica, and quite a few other nice talks, one on Africa and etc. So keep looking for these. They're advertised on the library Facebook page, and I'll put out flyers around town, or the library put flyers out town. And anyway, look for that if you're interested. I wanted to do this series because it's a little hard for many people to travel these days, and it's nice to at least see other people getting out and reminding us we're part of the world. So tonight, Jon is going to give us a talk about his wonderful trip to the Dolomite Mountains with his daughter, Rio. Jon came to Haines originally almost 20 years ago, I think 2004, you said? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And he is now based in Flagstaff, but he has pretty strong ties to Haines still. And he's a river rafting guide, amongst other things, and has guided trips in the Alsac and Grand Canyon and other pretty wonderful places around the world. And so he and his daughter recently did a trip to the Dolomite Mountains, and he will tell us about them. So again, if you have questions, you can send them in the chat, and Rio is looking at them. She's online as well, and so she'll jump in every once in a while, and then we'll have a question period at the end. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction, and Brandon for putting it together for from the library, and all you guys that are there listening to me. I hope it's going to be a enjoyable talk for you guys. Rio and I wanted to I wanted to take Rio on a trip to Europe, and originally I asked Rio, I said, "Where do you want to go?" And she's like, "Greece, go to the ocean." And I don't know, I think with the pandemic and trying to figure out a good place to go, it was a little tricky, and it wasn't too much thought put into it, but I did know I wanted to go to the Dolomites and maybe not listen to my daughter as much as I should have. So I ended up just buying some tickets to Milan. And so we had the tickets, but we still needed to figure out all the details about going to Italy, which I'm gonna turn my video off. But yeah, so I ended up getting really busy before the trip and not really putting much effort into the planning part of it. We just decided we'd just figure it out as we went, which in retrospect, I'm not sure I would do that again. But we did have a wonderful trip and had an amazing experience, had some amazing experiences in the mountains. We tried going to the beach, and really wasn't the time. In August is is a really busy time in Italy for tourism, and especially at the beaches. The other thing that was going on is that, of course, it was COVID. This was last August, and we had family there. So that was another reason driving for us, not only the Dolomites, but we have family members in not too far away in south of Milan, and I thought we would go visit them. And so I made some connections with them and talked to them on the phone. And it turned out, really, after conversations with them, that they had been so terrorized from COVID, at least my family members had. And from being in the hospital themselves to watching all these people around them die, that they didn't really want to try to do anything. They didn't want us to come, actually. And we had already bought our tickets, and I really thought hard. I thought twice about going. I thought maybe about canceling the whole trip, but just decided to go for it anyhow. And we'd had all our shots, and thought we were going to rent a car. We were going to try to stay in the mountains as much as we could, away from people. And so yeah, that was the kind of the beginning of it. And this is I hope, can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Dad.
Okay. So yeah, this is just the first picture here, where this is like one of the first couple of days we finally got out of the plane. It took us a couple of days to recover from our flight over there. It's a long ways. We flew to Frankfurt, and then from Frankfurt to Milan. Actually from Juneau to Anchorage, and then Anchorage to Frankfurt. So I thought it was a pretty good connection, really. But let's see, how do I move this? I'm trying to figure out how to get the slides to go. Pause share.
You can try just hitting the arrow key, the right arrow key on your keyboard.
Oh, yeah, it's not doing it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, yeah, so this gives you a perspective where we were at. The Dolomites are in I think that there's might be the Dolomites might be in other countries there, like Switzerland and Germany, but where we were just in the northern part, so it borders these other countries. So the photo on the left actually, or the picture on the left, shows the mountainous regions in Europe, and you can see Italy right in the center. And then the picture on the right has that little red star. That's actually the Dolomite region right there in the northern.
And a lot of the places that we were staying, like through our hiking, were not only people from like Italy, but all of the bordering countries. So it was a lot of mixture of different languages as we were traveling.
Yeah, and you can see, let's see, so this is another, this is a picture of the regions of Italy in that northern area that I just showed you. It's kind of, Veneto is there's not really too many mountains in that area, but the Trentino, Alto Adige, which is where Trento is, that's like the main part of where the Dolomites are. But there's also some sections of the Lombardy area, which is just where Milan's in. And it's in the north part of that. But you can see where Switzerland and Austria and Slovenia are right in there, borders that area. There's, I think Germany's too far away either. This is a picture in Milan. This is actually at the end of our trip, but we didn't really have, I didn't have too many photos of Milan when we first got there. And it's an incredibly beautiful city. We really didn't, I wasn't very motivated to spend time in the city. I think I'm just more attracted to the mountains, but I know that there's so much to see there. We seriously could have spent a lot more time in Milan. And
it's one of the places for like historical fashion, and kind of a lot of the high-end fashion in Italy was produced there, and that's kind of what it's famous for. But there's also a lot of historical pieces that are in Milan.
Yeah, it was really just a really beautiful city. Like just, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess I wasn't used to, I've never been to Europe before. It was my first time and was pretty blown away. So this is our first trip out, which we were pretty much like, well, where are we going to go? And it looked like, well, the mountains are here. We're in the city. Let's just go up this road. It's kind of what we did. And there's the picture on the right. You can see our little car there. And we ended up driving up this road up into these mountains, which were just, it was so cool. Like just big, huge cliffs. And this is, these rocks were where they climb at. And it's all set up for, you know, it's all bolted. So you could just go up with these carabiners and clip in as you climbed up. And just really beautiful country.
And this place was just like up this really small, like middle of nowhere kind of road that we just happened to go up and keep driving. And it was so beautiful. Like there was really towering peaks on either side of us, like for at least an hour of driving.
Yeah, and I think this was and there was all these just super cute little towns. So here's another thing you guys should know about this is that we didn't speak Italian, which in looking back at that, that was kind of hard. And I wish that we would have learned more Italian before we've gone, because it's not like a lot of people speak English there. And that was our fault that we didn't learn more Italian. And but man, it was just like trying to figure out where we were and to know about, like how do we set up our phone, because we had about 3 weeks, and there was some complications to it, but we did figure things out.
Also, since we were like traveling through the mountains and not in the popular areas, less and less people spoke English or broken parts of English.
Right. But you can see like these beautiful, like these buildings were a lot of them were built out of stone. And, I think they might've been built like 500 or more years ago, and just super beautiful and colorful. And yeah, it's really, there's some more pictures I'll show you. We ended up going to Milan, and then we went up to the mountains, and then we realized we had to go back to Milan for something about our phone. And then we went up another we got a place to stay, and we just randomly got this place to stay in this town in the mountains that seemed really cool. And we thought we'd settle in there to just kind of figure out our plans. And
we spent about 3 days here in this town.
And it turned out it was Rio's 15th birthday on that. We got an Airbnb in this really ancient stone building that looked like it could have been like a museum or something, and it was sitting next to this tower. And there was a castle in this right outside this little town this is the picture on the left is the castle that we walked up into, and you could see the town below. But you can see the setting is it's pretty fabulous. And the colors that they used on the buildings, and it was kind of surreal. So yeah, we spent 3 days there, and during that time we ended up, even on the way driving out there was tons of grapes. Like there's just grape fields everywhere. They obviously make lots of wine there, and lots of gardens everywhere. This is a day hike that we did out of that village. And I think there was a couple ski areas not too far around there too that had really cute little villages around it. And yeah, this is just some of the day hiking that we did up to this. They do a lot of hydroelectricity up in there, and so they built these dammed up these little lakes. I think the one in this picture isn't one of them, but it's near one of them.
This hike is probably like one of our hikes that reminded me most of like kind of Alaska. Like it was very like mossy and kind of had that feel of like walking up around the glaciers in Haines and stuff like that.
Yeah, lots of flowers. Yeah, so we spent, let's see, what we spent 3 days there, and then finally we were like, okay, this is going to be our plan. We're going to do a backpack trip, and what we had to do is we had to figure out. That was the other thing, is we didn't have any guidebooks for the Via Ferratas, and I knew that's something we wanted to do, and backpack. So what we did is we kind of just researched it and figured out that we could call some of these, there's all these national parks there, and you can't just, it's not like our national parks where you just get a permit to go backpacking and then you camp wherever you want, or, you know, wherever the designated areas are. You have to actually stay in these refugios, is what they call them. They're like, they're
basically huts, like a hostel kind of thing.
But they were all really nice, like usually big, beautiful stone buildings with beautiful windows, and the settings were off the charts. There's some pictures I'll show you. But yeah, so we took off on this trip for, I think it was like 3 nights, and they were all, we'd all stay, every night was at a different refugio that provided food for us. And let's see, we did have to bring a sleeping bag, and that was mostly because of COVID.
The photo on the right too was like, to get up to that spot, you had to take a ski lift. So normally like that would be all snowy, and like it was just amazing, like to think that people could ski in that area too. Yeah,
the country was pretty phenomenal, as you'll see. And this is just on that first hike that we did. And it's got these big limestone cliffs, lots of limestone cliffs that aren't really folded too much. They're pretty, you know, a lot of them were tilted, but still pretty much in place, like they were deposited probably millions of years ago. You can see the snow, lots of snow. And this was the Via Ferratas, that's what they call them. And they're originally they were set up during World War I and World War II so people could travel through the mountains because a lot of the roads were blocked off during the war zone, but they could still kind of work themselves to different communities via these trails or routes that were set up with cables and ladders. And then I think what happened is that people realized how much fun they are. And so a lot of these trails were kind of fixed up, and new ones were put in. And I think they still kind of are adding new trails in here because the country is so cool. And you can make these crazy trails on the bedding plains. You can see Rio in the picture on the right. A lot of these trails were on the bedding plains, and you can see it's just a very thin edge, but with the cables, it makes it a lot easier. And then you get to these points where they're pretty spectacular. The other thing that was going on was it was almost, I don't know, I was almost calling it monsoon-like, but these clouds would build in the afternoon, and sometimes it would rain. We didn't really get that much rain on our trip, but the clouds would build, and it would get almost scary with sometimes you would hear thunder and lightning. That's one thing you didn't really want to do, was be clipping onto some, steel cable.
The visibility also kind of got scary sometimes. Like I'd be walking behind my dad like 6 feet and I couldn't see him sometimes.
Yeah, but the way the clouds moved through the mountains were something that was kind of surreal, magical. It was something that really gave life to those mountains like I'd never seen before. We commented, we'd always make fun of kind of there were some other hikers. It wasn't super crowded. I mean, I didn't feel like it was super crowded. There were definitely people around, but we really enjoyed this one hiker who just seemed to be super casual about his attire.
Yeah, he was just kind of hiking in like flowy like not really what everyone else was wearing, and he had like 7 pairs of sunglasses he was showing us. Like he was just a very cool person.
Yeah, so we liked him. We took a picture of him because we liked him. Here's some more of the, on the Via Ferratas, where the clouds moved in and it got really mystical. And you can see the one on the right, it's like there were these caves in this material too, that kind of little openings here and there. And we had glissade down some of the snowfields, and this picture was taken right after Rio just had a pretty good glissade, as you can see the smile there. Yeah, it looks like Rio was having a good time. I was having a pretty good time being able to go on a trip with my daughter, who had just turned 15, and she still was, was having a good time. I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, on that one hike, there was a lot more ice fields than the other hikes, and there was a certain way that we didn't go down it, but like you had to hike down this long hill of pretty much just the ice field. It was kind of scary.
They some of these trails were challenging to find, but the one on the left, upper left, you can see the white and the red. Those were that was the trail marker. They marked it. And the picture on the left shows the Refugio, the first night Refugio we stayed at. You can see how it kind of just blends into the cliffs. It was a stone building. And then on the right, you can see the kind of food that we had, we really loved it. These were the English versions of the books that I would recommend that we didn't have. And there's so many different hikes, and it depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in the Via Ferratas, which I would recommend highly. They're not very hard if you even if you don't climb much. I didn't really feel you can have your input on that, Rio, what your thoughts were, but I felt like if you're not afraid of heights too much, that you can easily do them. Is really probably the fear of heights is more than the actual climbing part.
Yeah, and it's usually whenever there's stuff that could be challenging for a normal person, is like it'll be very marked. But the way they made it was very, very safe for people to go with not much experience, and yeah, it was just very accessible and very nice.
And I think it does, and regardless of your ability, no matter what, when you go through one of those Via Ferratas, you feel like you're a badass. These are actually on the Via Ferratas. So the other books were just on the hikes. So you don't have to do the Via Ferratas. The other thing about the area is that it's got amazing rock climbing. So I think there's really good rock climbers that go up there, which that don't necessarily do the Via Ferratas. They just set their own trails. This is the typical Via Ferrata gear. So it's just a regular harness with a regular climbing helmet. And then what you do is you have these 2 lanyards. So as if you're going up a ladder, you can have one clipped in, and then you move the other one as you move up. And then you're always clipped in. You always have one clip in when you're moving the clips. So it makes it really safe. This is the packing list for the hiking in the Dolomites that I just got offline. Having the Refugios, you can really go light. And there were people that had these backpacks it was nothing like going backpacking in the United States, because you didn't really need a tent. You just, bring the minimal amount of clothes.
And you didn't need to pack food either, which was a big one.
Yeah, it's good to have snacks, but other than that, there wasn't much. Water is good too. So it's almost like day hiking. This is day 2 going up on some of the Via Ferratas. You can see us clipped in on the right. and some of the trail markers above Rio's head there on the left. This is working our way. It was a short hike, this one, to the second refugio, which is on the picture on the right, off in the distance, is where we're headed. And we went and left our packs there and did a day hike on another Via Ferrata. This is working our way to it still. And then I think this might be our day hike right here.
Yeah, we started a day hike. We got to the second refugio around noon, and we had something to eat, and then we dropped off our packs in our room, and we went on a separate refugio for the last part of the day. And that's what these photos are.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. It was definitely on the edge. There's the refugio we left. And yeah, there was this crazy light that was going on from this clouds coming in and out. This picture on the left, actually Rio's in the left corner, walking.
Yeah, the trail is like that little ledge right there, and you can kind of see me in it. But like that's how kind of straight down and up the walls were that we were walking on.
It's just there's the refugio that we stayed at, and you can see it's really awesome setting with really good food. The way the refugios were set up was that you could get, I think a lot of them were, you could get your own room, but a lot of them were set up so that there were bunk beds, so you'd be sleeping in with like 4 or 5 other people. And
the food that they serve there is usually traditional to like the region that they're at or the countries around it. Like in some of the future refugios we stayed at, it was more around other countries than Italy, and they had traditional food there. And so some of that photo on the right was like it was like fried cheese, I think, and something like that. There was a certain name to it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super fancy. Some of the places did have some amazing food. Definitely, they weren't all the same. And some of the smaller refugios, they were definitely more personable with you there, and like you knew the owner and the family that owned it, and and it was super fun to meet all these people from all over the world that were there. And it was, I think that in terms of our COVID situation, it was probably the only part really that felt like, well, maybe is this safe? We were outside the whole time, so except for when we stayed in the refugios.
And when we were walking around, we had to wear masks and stuff like that.
This was when was this? This was
the hike out.
Yeah. So we spent 2 nights on this, and you can see how spectacular the country is there. Lots of these ladders.
That hike out was quite long, actually. It was a lot of going up and down very steep hills, and we had to go back through the kind of area where we stayed our first night.
Yes, it was probably like a couple thousand feet. This is us getting down and then going back we went to a store and they had all these really awesome desserts. I'm not sure what we got there, but I remember taking this photo and just being like, oh my God, maybe because we just came off the hike. And then, so then we went to Venice. We did go to the city there and we thought we'd go check that out. And
I think we stayed 2 or 3 nights actually, in the islands of Venice.
Yeah, and it was spectacular. Just the buildings are just incredible. The whole place is it's so ornate, and it's got so much history there. And It's really changing right now with the way the ocean's changing too. And but everyone was saying while we were there that you're so lucky because there's not that many people here. And the only thing I was thinking is, wow, there's a lot of people. But it's beautiful. Like, you know, there it is.
It's also, I feel like a perk of staying actually on the islands is that, at least for me, I went up and woke up early and got breakfast, and there was like no tourists there, and it was very cool to see like all of the local shops and stuff setting up for breakfast and everything like that. It was very peaceful.
Oh, it was so funny because like here we were in the the big city, and I went to pick up a friend at the airport, and they had these photos in the airport, and I was like, I mean, I'm just, like, why am I putting these in here? It's mostly because I was like driven to be outside, and there were these fantastic photos in the airport there. So then we ended up at this other park, and this was as you look at the map of Italy, we were heading actually further east. Like we were just kind of hitting just a few of the national parks as you go east, and I would say that there was so much more than what we actually saw within 3 weeks, that we could have spent so much more time in that little area. This was a really pretty park, just super beautiful. With these big jagged peaks, and it had some via ferratas and it had some refugios. So here we go on another adventure. This is the refugio that we stayed at that actually had a road to it.
Yeah.
So there were people that had just gone up for the day to eat, and they had this was in. I don't know if this was, I don't think this was a different refugio, but as we were getting closer to the border there, or further east, we started getting into these, the strudel. There's a lot of strudel at these refugios that were so good.
That was probably the best food that we ate, I would say, on that whole trip, was from that refugio.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of beautiful clouds with beautiful peaks. And if you're into these via ferratas, they're spectacular. They take you to places that are pretty spectacular. These two photos just show the clouds changing. So this is we came back down from that hike, and we stayed. This was. This still was in Italy, but it was a small town that we spent a night just to kind of regroup before we went to Slovenia. And it was a kind of a farm. There's these agricultural areas or like farming areas that they where they make rooms for people. It's like an Airbnb thing. But what was cool is that they're so into the really efficiencies of things, and they had these. Water boilers that were that use wood, that are really efficient. I think Scott Ramsey has one of those, a similar one in Haines. But then there's these wood stoves too that I know there's a few of them in Haines where they don't put off a lot. They put off the heat, but they're really efficient with the stove, with the wood. And that's the stove on the right. It's one of those wood stoves. So yeah, we drove to Slovenia, which is right next door to Italy. A real easy thing to do. It was just a few hours away, and all of a sudden ended up in this really kind of real mountainous area that we looked down and saw this canyon, and just decided to go explore it. And it was super beautiful.
That canyon was like just another kind of random road that we just chose to go down, and there was like no advertisement about the hike or anything like that. And there was this really amazing bridge, and it looked like some people had gone on it, but not many. And it was just such a gorgeous place.
Yeah, it was. And it's really a lot of the rocks, in almost all the rocks that we went through were either a limestone or dolomite, so they're similar. And as we worked further towards Slovenia, we really started to get more into the caves, which I'm interested in caves, and there was a lot of them in Slovenia. This is some of the Slovenian food, which is really good. Those are potatoes. You remember what that food was, Rio? Thought it was like
I don't remember the name, but there's fried cheese on the left, and that was like a kind of a big thing. And then pizza, and then the one on the top right is like a very traditional cheese, I think. And it's like kind of what you eat it with. It was super good. It's like kind of more exotic goat cheese.
I would say that the mountains were spectacular, and the food, all the food that we had there was pretty spectacular too. This was, we ended up going to this little town in Slovenia and checked out this castle. So we're right on the castle right now, looking down on this little town. And there was a bunch of hang gliders, like one after another, that were coming off the higher mountains and landing in the fields down there. And the history there was really interesting in Slovenia, you know, how they celebrated the takeover, you know, thinking about Ukraine right now. And I don't think they're thinking the same thing Slovenia did, but Slovenia's been taken over by like 7 or 8 countries, you know, or different, you know, like they had all these different flags that they would fly for their history. I just thought that was interesting. You could constantly see the effects of like that there had been war here and people had fought over the land so many different times. It was constantly.
Yeah, driving through Slovenia was kind of sad, but also eye-opening. Like, as my dad was saying, it was very obvious a lot of war was going on, and like broken down walls and stuff like that. And it was very cool to see. Well, not cool, but like eye-opening.
So this is us driving up into the Julian Alps, which is it's kind of the extension of the mountains in Italy, but further east. And this is this one waterfall. It's called the Boca Waterfall, and you can see the water. It essentially is just coming out of the ground in that photo. There's this giant cave, and the water just comes pouring out. And it's one of the tributaries of the Sosha River, which has several of these big waterfalls that are coming directly out of the ground that are essentially just caves. This is a picture of this, I think, this waterfall and the cave system that had been mapped. And then you can see the Sosha River, which was this super beautiful river in these mountains. It was spectacular. We ended up doing a day trip on a float with, you know, they do these day float river runs. And I'm a river runner, so it was kind of funny for me to be a passenger, but it was really,
our guide was really cool too.
Yeah, I don't have any photos of it because it was raining that day. It was one of the few days we had rain, and but it was still really fun. This was this one little section of the river that it goes through this super narrow gorge, and yeah, it's just a pretty spectacular place to go. This is we went to another park in Slovenia. It's Mount Triglav, which is the highest peak in Slovenia, and it was right off the edge of it where we did a cool via ferrata there. This was actually before. This is a side hike that we did before that. And there were some cabins. It was a cool little drainage we hiked up. And we stayed at this campground that had this wine barrel cabin you could stay in. So this was on the Via Ferrata I was just talking about that. It was really beautiful day hike that we did. And on the day hike, there's this stone face. You can see it on the left photo. and the Heathen Maiden. That's the name. It's got a story about it.
There's a whole like almost religious / like spiritual story about behind the face in the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is just going up on that Via Ferrata was really spectacular, going up onto to the top of this mountain. It was this little peak, and up on the top of the peak was this cave. It was just spectacular, and the route goes right through the cave, and then you kind of walk down these really beautiful hills back down to where we started. You can see some of the white rocks. This was just driving around after that Via Ferrata we went to look at a cave, and really beautiful stone. It looked like marble. Then this is at the end, we spent a day in Milan, and we went to the Leonardo da Vinci Museum, and it was like we were only there for about an hour, and could have spent the whole day there. It was spectacular. And just like the buildings are so ornate. It's so beautiful. So yeah, this is just a few notes that I wrote. I was like, learn the language prior to the trip. Figure out your phone situation and how you're gonna, if you want Wi-Fi in the country, how you're gonna get it. You're gonna look up things, download your maps ahead of time, and figure out baggage plans on the airplanes. Bring a first aid kit. We didn't really use that, but that's it there. If you guys have any questions, hopefully you enjoyed our trip to the Dolomites there. Anybody there?
I'm watching the chat and no one's said anything, but I'll let you know if they do.
Okay.
Jen Allen said amazing.
Nice. I would recommend going there just to experience the food in the mountains. You don't have to do the Via Ferratas, but the mountains and the food what a great experience.
Here we're getting a few questions. How much did the refugios cost to stay at?
That's a good question. Yeah, so it was just overall our experience ended up being a little bit more than I was planning. The Via Ferrata or the refugios, you can probably stay there for about 20 or 30 bucks a night. So it's in euros, which are similar. But what we did is we just had them include the food, which ended up being about $60 a night per person. And
sorry.
Yeah, the other costs were like we rented a car the whole time, and that was probably, it was like $2,000 to rent it for about 3 weeks, which I thought was kind of high actually, but it made a big difference to be able to travel around and explore. There was a lot of places that I didn't show photos of, but that were just spectacular, really beautiful.
I want to ask, is there any Italian dialects to know for areas dialect to know for the areas you traveled?
I didn't get the question. What was it?
Is there certain Italian dialects to know for the areas you traveled?
No, we didn't even, we just didn't really practice Italian at very little of it.
And usually what I learned is that like around 15, like you're taught at a very young age to be fluent in at least 2 languages because of how many languages are just alive in all of Europe. And so a lot of people usually know multiple languages. And so usually people will know a little bit of English. And Dad, someone else asked, did you rent one car for the whole trip or multiple cars?
No, just one car.
And then Patty Brown said, that is about the going price for US now in rental cars.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm
sorry.
Go ahead.
It was in Europe. They try to limit people from driving cars and to use public transportation. More like the age limit, at least in Italy, is 22, I think. And you have to pay, like around $5,000 to get your driver's license. And so, but what they do is they make public transportation very, 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 very accessible to everybody. And I think it's for kind of safety, how many car accidents there is and less people off roads, better for the environment kind of thing. And yeah, so even if we didn't rent a car, it would probably be very easy to get around.
Yeah, that is.
And I didn't meet any people my age, or like not for like a long time. We met a few people at campgrounds and stuff like that, but we were traveling around a lot. So I did see and like meet like briefly people my age. Someone says, how many miles between refugios, elevation / gain or loss?
So yeah, so there was, they varied. You could, I think most of our hikes were, when Rio and I hiked, were probably like 4 to 6 hours. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say like probably our longest one, I think, was like around 8.
Yeah.
But it was, and usually if we woke up early, we could make it around half day and stuff like that. But I would say like very
a couple thousand feet too. You could easily on one hike, you could go down 2,000, up 2,000, that kind of deal.
Yeah, it was a lot of going up and down, not much of mileage, but I think that some are miles wise. I think it varied from like a mile to 6 miles. Would you say, Dad? Some hikes. Yeah. I think actually our longest one was around like 9-ish, but again, it wasn't. It was usually like flat grounds in between going up and down.
Yeah, I would say that what Ria was saying about the public transportation was something that was really refreshing to see, how that some of these remote roads, they actually had bus stops so that you could, if you wanted to, the little bit of reading that I did before the trip was that you should just rent a car. But I did notice that some of these trails had bus stops on them. And so that was really cool to see. Yeah, and there was another thing, like, so in Flagstaff, there's a lot of homeless people. And I think during COVID, there's even been more. And it's been a little disturbing for myself just to see so many homeless people around. And when we went to Europe, we didn't see any. Like, I mean, there might be some, but we just didn't see the poverty.
Also, same with like trash and like how clean the streets were. Like even in the big cities, there was never like trash on the ground and in like the ditches and in the woods and stuff. Like you would never see that kind of stuff. It was always super clean, and yeah, it was very just refreshing to see.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Going on the thing of did I meet anyone my age, we camped at this one spot by the river, and there was a what was it? It was like white water kayaking. That was competition, and there was like a team of a bunch of kids there that were like camping there for a competition. It was very, very cool to see. I feel like we don't have much of that as a common high school sport, but we watched a little bit of it, and it was super, super entertaining actually.
Right. Yeah, another tip I just remembered about traveling in Europe was that you don't necessarily, like, we just bought our ticket to Milan, but what I found out later is that if you can find a cheap ticket to anywhere in Europe, and that, you know, like you can really get cheap tickets to, you know, certain places, and once you get to Europe, then you can buy another ticket to wherever you're going. There's a good way to do that.
And my dad mentioned that it was very busy in August, and that's why we weren't going to like the bigger cities. And one of the reasons is because people, a lot of Europeans, like most Europeans, get August off, and it's like considered their off season. And so a lot of places are shut down, and a lot of Europeans like travel to like different parts of Europe. And so it's also busy with tourists, but also Europeans from other countries. Let's see.
Hey, you guys, thanks for being there and to listen to our story. I hope it was enjoyable for you, and hope it gives you a little break. I mean, I know it's the mountainous. You guys are where you're at. You have some of the most beautiful mountains in the world, but there certainly are some other mountains out there. And thank you for your time.
Jon, this is Cindy. Thank you very much for doing this. This was really cool. I've never been to Europe, and well, I guess I have once, but not there. But thank you very much. And I know how much time it takes to put together one of these talks. So we really appreciate it. And I'd like to remind people that if you have some friends who forgot to show up tonight to the Zoom thing, will be a recording at the library, and it's on the. You go to the e-learning tab, and then online programs, and it'll be posted probably in a couple of days. So anyway, thank you very much, Jon and Rio.
Okay, have a good night, you guys.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right.